They told me it was about recovery. Coach Rivers pulled me aside after Tuesday's shoot-around, his hand heavy on my shoulder like he was delivering news about a death in the family. Maybe he was. "Listen, Marcus," he said, eyes not quite meeting mine. "We need you fresh for the stretch run. That hamstring's been bothering you, right? Take the Thanksgiving road trip off. Rest up. We'll need you when it matters." I'm 34 years old. I've been in this league for 12 seasons. I know what that conversation means. It means they don't need me anymore. The hamstring was fine. A little tight, sure, but nothing that would keep me off the court if they actually wanted me there. But I nodded. I smiled. I said all the right things because that's what veterans do when they're trying to convince themselves they still have value. We pretend we don't see the writing on the wall, even when it's spray-painted in neon letters right in front of our faces. The team flew out Wednesday morning. I watched from my apartment window as the charter buses rolled toward the airport, carrying 23 guys who still had a future in this game. I wasn't on that bus. For the first time in 12 years, I was spending Thanksgiving alone while my team played without me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Marcus? It's me. 3 years. 3 years since I'd heard that voice, and my body still remembered how to react. My chest tightened. My fingers gripped the phone harder than they should have. "Vanessa, I know," she said quickly. "I know I shouldn't be calling, but I need your help. It's Harold. Harold, her stepfather. The man who'd taught me how to tie a tie properly before my first All-Star game. Who'd sat with me for 4 hours in a hospital waiting room when my mom had her surgery. Who'd shaken my hand at our engagement party and told me I was the son he'd always wanted. The man I'd abandoned when I walked away from his stepdaughter. "What happened?" I asked, already knowing I was going to regret this conversation. "He's sick, Marcus. Really sick. The doctors say it's pneumonia, but he won't stay in the hospital. You know how stubborn he is." Her voice cracked, and I hated how much that sound still affected me. "I'm stuck in Miami for a brand deal I can't cancel. The contract's ironclad, and if I bail, I'm looking at a 6-figure lawsuit. I have nobody else to ask." Of course she was in Miami. Of course it was for a brand deal. That's what had killed us in the first place. Her transformation from the woman I'd fallen in love with into someone I didn't recognize. Someone who measured worth in followers and engagement rates. Someone who'd live-streamed our relationship until there was nothing private left to protect. "You want me to babysit your stepfather?" "Don't say it like that. He asks about you, Marcus. All the time. He never understood why we ended things. He still has that photo of you two at the charity golf tournament in his living room. The guilt hit like a defender's elbow to the ribs. Sharp, unexpected, effective. Where is he?" She gave me the address. Same house. The one I'd spent countless Sunday dinners in, watching football with Harold while Vanessa and her mother argued about wedding plans in the kitchen. The one I'd carefully avoided for 3 years, taking different routes through the city just to make sure I'd never accidentally drive past it. "Just for the weekend," Vanessa said. "Thursday through Sunday. That's all I'm asking. Please, Marcus, he's dying. You said it was pneumonia. He's 76 years old with a bad heart. Everything's dying when you're 76 with a bad heart." I looked out the window again. The city stretched out below me, gray and cold under November clouds. Somewhere out there, my team was boarding a plane. Somewhere else, my ex-girlfriend was probably filming herself asking me for this favor, turning even this private moment into content. But Harold was dying. "I'll be there at 6, I said, and hung up before she could thank me. I didn't want her gratitude. I didn't want anything from her except the ability to forget she ever existed. The apartment felt too quiet after that. I'd bought this place 3 years ago, right after the breakup. Penthouse suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, smart home everything. The real estate agent had called it a bachelor's dream. What she meant was, this is where men go to be alone with their regrets. I spent the rest of the day trying not to think about what I'd agreed to. I went to the gym, not the team facility, but the old public one where I'd learned to play, where nobody cared that I used to average 18 points a game. I shot free throws for an hour, the ball echoing in the empty gym like a heartbeat. Steady, rhythmic, reliable, unlike everything else in my life. By the time I pulled up to Harold's house that evening, the sun had set and the streetlights were flickering on. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just gotten used to bigger things, bigger apartments, bigger contracts, bigger mistakes. I sat in the car for a full 5 minutes before I could make myself get out. The front door opened before I reached it. Harold stood there in a bathrobe and slippers, thinner than he should be, grayer than I remembered, but still with that same crooked smile that had made me feel welcome from the very first time Vanessa brought me home. "Marcus Chen," he said, my full name rolling off his tongue like he'd been practicing it. Thought maybe you'd forgotten where I lived. The guilt doubled, tripled. Hey, Harold, you gonna stand on my porch all night? Or you gonna come inside and tell me why my team traded away their best defensive guard? My team. He still called them my team, even though I was pretty sure management was measuring me for a buyout. I followed him inside. The house smelled the same. Coffee and old books and that specific brand of air freshener Harold's wife had loved before she passed. The furniture was the same. The photos on the walls were the same, except for one addition. There, on the mantel, right next to his late wife's portrait, was a framed photo from 4 years ago. Me and Harold at that charity golf tournament Vanessa had mentioned. Both of us grinning like idiots, my arm around his shoulders, his hand holding up the trophy we'd won. I was wearing the watch he'd given me that Christmas, the one I'd stopped wearing after the breakup because it hurt too much to look at. I'd forgotten how happy I looked in that photo, like I had everything figured out, like the future was just a series of good decisions waiting to happen. You kept that, I said quietly. Why wouldn't I? Harold moved slowly to his recliner, each step careful and measured. That was a good day. We had a lot of good days, you and me. I couldn't look at him. I focused on the photo instead. I'm sorry I haven't called. I know why you haven't. She told me what happened between you two. The whole social media thing. The pressure. The fights. He settled into his chair with a soft grunt. But that was between you and her. Didn't have to be between you and me. It felt wrong, I admitted. Coming around after everything ended. Like I'd be choosing sides. Marcus. He waited until I looked at him. His eyes were still sharp, still seeing right through whatever defenses I tried to put up. You were like a son to me. That doesn't end just because you and Vanessa couldn't make it work. You think I stopped caring about you the day you walked out? I had no answer for that. Or maybe I did, but it was buried under 3 years of shame and avoidance, and the gnawing certainty that I'd failed him somehow. She says you won't stay in the hospital. Hospital's for dying. I'm not done yet. He reached for a glass of water on the side table, his hand shaking slightly. Besides, the food's terrible and the nurses don't know a damn thing about basketball. You see the game last night? That rookie point guard you guys drafted can't run a pick and roll to save his life. There it was. The real reason I'd stayed away. Because Harold still cared. Still watched every game. Still saw me as something more than a depreciating asset. And I didn't know how to tell him that the organization agreed with his assessment. They'd drafted my replacement, and now they were just waiting for the right moment to cut me loose. He's learning, I said weakly. He's 20 years old. You know what you were doing when you were 20? Leading your college team to the Sweet 16. This kid can't even make a left-handed layup. I couldn't help it. I smiled. You've been watching film. I'm old, not dead, and I'm not blind either. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those sharp eyes. You've lost a step. I can see it. But you're still better than half the guys getting minutes ahead of you. So either Rivers is an idiot, or something else is going on. Which is it? This was the conversation I'd been dreading. Not with Coach Rivers, not with my agent, but with Harold, because he'd ask the questions I'd been avoiding asking myself. I think they're trying to move on, I said slowly. Younger, cheaper, better for the rebuild. And you're just gonna let them? I'm 34, Harold, maybe it's time. Time for what? To quit? You? He shook his head, disappointment clear on his face. The Marcus I knew would have fought, would have proved them wrong. The Marcus you knew had something to prove. Now I'm just tired. The words came out heavier than I expected. Truer. I'd been tired for a while now, but I'd never said it out loud. Never admitted that the love for the game had dimmed somewhere along the way, replaced by obligation and routine and the desperate need to prove I still belonged. Harold was quiet for a long moment. Then, you were happy when you were with her. Did you know that? Really happy. Not the kind of happy you put on for cameras or sponsors. Real happy. The kind that makes an old man think maybe there's still good in the world. That was a long time ago. 3 years? That's not long. That's barely long enough to heal wrong. She's the one who called you about me being here, isn't she? I said suddenly, the pieces clicking together. This whole thing, the timing, she set this up. Does it matter? Yes. It matters because she turned everything into a performance. Our relationship, our engagement, our breakup, it was all content for her, all part of the brand. The anger surprised me, hot and immediate. She's probably filming herself in Miami right now, talking about how she had to make this difficult choice between work and family, how she trusted her ex to step up, how this is all part of her growth journey. You're angry. I'm tired of being a supporting character in someone else's story. Harold nodded slowly. And what story are you telling yourself, Marcus? The one where you're the victim? The one where you walked away with clean hands? Because from where I'm sitting, you both made choices, and you're both living with them. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to explain that it wasn't that simple, that she'd changed, that I'd had no choice. But the truth was harder and uglier than that. The truth was I'd stopped fighting for us long before she did. I'd let the distance grow. I'd hidden behind team obligations and road trips and the convenient excuse that her social media obsession was the problem, when really I was just scared. Scared that she was building something bigger than me. Scared that I'd become irrelevant in her life the same way I was becoming irrelevant on the court. So I'd walked away first, before she could. I should check what you need, I said, changing the subject. Medications, food. Vanessa sent me a list. Of course she did. Harold smiled faintly. That girl could organize a hurricane. I spent the next hour getting settled in. Harold's medication schedule was complicated. 3 different pills at different times, an inhaler twice a day, a blood pressure cuff that needed to be used every morning and evening. Vanessa's list was thorough, almost compulsively thorough. The kind of detailed organization that made me remember why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. Before the followers, before the sponsorships, before every moment of our lives had to be captured and curated and shared. By 10 o'clock, Harold was fading. I helped him to bed, made sure he had water and his phone within reach, and promised I'd be right downstairs if he needed anything. Marcus, he called as I reached the door. Thank you for coming. I know this wasn't easy. Get some rest, Harold. I closed the door and stood in the hallway for a long moment, surrounded by photos of a family I used to belong to. Vanessa's high school graduation, their vacation to Hawaii, Christmas mornings and birthday parties and all the mundane, beautiful moments that make up a life. And there, at the end of the hall, was a photo from our engagement party. Me and Vanessa, her hand raised to show off the ring, both of us glowing with the kind of certainty that only comes before you learn how complicated love really is. I'd thought we were building something, a future, a family, a life that meant something beyond the game. Instead, I was spending Thanksgiving weekend alone in my ex-girlfriend's stepfather's house, wondering how the hell I'd ended up here. My phone buzzed. Text from my agent. Rivers called. Wants to talk Monday about your role going forward. We need to prepare. I knew what that meant. Your role going forward was management speak for, we're phasing you out. I was being replaced on the court. I was being replaced in Vanessa's life. She'd probably already moved on, probably dating some influencer or entrepreneur who understood her world better than I ever had. And I was alone. Again. By choice. By pride. By the stubborn inability to fight for what I wanted until it was too late. I walked downstairs to the living room and stood in front of that photo on the mantel. Me and Harold, arms around each other, grinning like we'd won something that mattered. I picked up the frame and sat down on the couch, holding it in my hands. Somewhere across the country, my team was getting ready to play without me. Somewhere in Miami, my ex-girlfriend was living her best life without me. Somewhere in the league office, executives were probably discussing my declining trade value without me. And here I was, in a house full of memories, holding a photo of a version of myself I barely recognized anymore. The version who still knew how to be happy. The version who still believed he was worth keeping around. I set the photo on the coffee table and leaned back, closing my eyes. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving. I'd spend it taking care of a sick old man who still saw me as something more than a depreciating asset, who still called them my team, who still kept my photo on his mantle like I was family. Maybe that was worth something. Maybe that was worth more than I'd given it credit for. Or maybe I was just too tired to keep running from the truth, that I'd thrown away something real because I was terrified it wouldn't last. Either way, I was here now, for better or worse. For the next 4 days, this was my reality. I just hoped I could survive it without completely falling apart. I woke up on Harold's couch at 6 a.m. to the sound of my phone vibrating against the coffee table. For a confused moment, I didn't know where I was. The ceiling was wrong. The light was wrong. Everything smelled like someone else's life. Then I remembered. The phone kept buzzing. Team group chat. I grabbed it, my neck stiff from sleeping at an awkward angle. DeAndre. Game day, baby. Who's ready to eat? Rookie kid whose name I could never remember. First Thanksgiving game. Let's get it. Coach Rivers. Shoot around at 10. Everyone on time. That means you, Stevens. Stevens. One time I'm late and y'all never let it go. They were in Detroit, playing the Pistons at 2 o'clock. I should have been there. Should have been in that hotel, eating overpriced room service breakfast and going through my pre-game routine. Instead, I was in my ex-girlfriend's childhood home, babysitting her dying stepfather. I set the phone face down and didn't reply. The house was quiet in that particular way houses get when someone sick is sleeping upstairs. Like the walls were holding their breath. I got up, folded the blanket I'd used, and tried to erase any evidence that I'd been there. Old habit from my rookie year, when I'd lived with a host family and was terrified of being an inconvenience. The kitchen was exactly as I remembered it. Yellow wallpaper with little flowers. The same coffee maker that took 10 minutes to brew a pot. The refrigerator covered in magnets from places Harold and his late wife had traveled. Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls. Simple trips. The kind people take when they're building memories instead of content. I started the coffee and opened the refrigerator to see what I had to work with. It was depressing. Expired milk. Wilted lettuce. A half-eaten sandwich that might have been there since the Clinton administration. Harold wasn't taking care of himself. He was probably eating cereal for dinner and calling it a meal. My phone buzzed again. Not the group chat this time. A direct message. Vanessa. How is he? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Me. Sleeping. Took his meds. Seems okay. 3 dots appeared immediately. She was typing. Probably had been waiting for me to respond. Vanessa. Thank you for doing this. I know it's weird. Me. It's fine. Vanessa. Marcus. Just my name. But I could hear her voice saying it. That particular tone she used when she knew I was lying. Me. What do you want me to say, V? That this is easy? That I love being here? Vanessa. I want you to say what you're actually feeling instead of pretending you don't feel anything. Me. I feel like I'm being manipulated. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared 3 times. I could picture her, somewhere in Miami, probably in a hotel room that cost more per night than most people made in a week, trying to figure out how to respond without starting a fight. Vanessa. I'm not trying to manipulate you. He's sick, and I had no one else to ask. That's the truth. Me. You have 1 million followers. I'm sure one of them would have helped. Vanessa. Don't be like that. Me. Like what? Honest? Vanessa. Mean. That stopped me. Was I being mean? Maybe. Probably. But 3 years of silence and unresolved hurt had to go somewhere, and apparently it was all coming out in text messages while I stood in her stepfather's kitchen at 6 in the morning on Thanksgiving. Me. I'm sorry, that was unfair. Vanessa. He really does ask about you. All the time. He never understood why we ended things. Me. Did you tell him? Vanessa. I told him we wanted different things. Me. That's diplomatic. Vanessa. What did you want me to say? That you walked away because you couldn't handle me being successful? There it was. The accusation I'd been waiting for. The one I deserved. Me. I walked away because you turned our entire relationship into a brand deal. Because I couldn't have a private conversation with you without wondering if you were going to post about it later. Because you cared more about the aesthetic of us than the reality. The 3 dots appeared and stayed there for a long time. Vanessa. You're right. I did that. And I'm sorry. But you want to know the truth? You were already gone. Long before I started posting about us. You were disappearing into basketball, into your own head, into this idea that if you just played hard enough and sacrificed enough, everything else would take care of itself. I was lonely, Marcus, and when I found something that made me feel less alone, you punished me for it. I read the message 3 times. Each time it hit harder, because she was right. I'd been disappearing. Using basketball as an excuse not to deal with real life, not to deal with her, not to deal with the terrifying possibility that I might not be enough, as a player, as a partner, as a person. Before I could figure out how to respond, I heard movement upstairs. Harold was awake. Me. I have to go. He's up. Vanessa. Okay, call me if anything changes, please. I didn't respond. I just pocketed the phone and headed upstairs. Harold was sitting on the edge of his bed looking smaller than he had the night before. Frailer. The kind of frail that reminds you that everyone you love is temporary. Morning, I said from the doorway. You make coffee? Yeah, I'll bring you a cup. I can walk downstairs, Marcus. I'm sick, not dead. But I noticed he let me help him stand. Let me steady him as we made our way down the stairs, one careful step at a time. His pride wouldn't let him admit he needed help, but his body wasn't giving him much choice. We settled at the kitchen table, the morning light coming through the windows in dusty streams. I poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from him, the same way I'd done dozens of times before. Sunday mornings after church, Saturday afternoons during football season, Random weekday evenings when Vanessa was working late, and I'd stop by just to talk. Your refrigerator is a crime scene, I said. Harold smiled faintly. I'm not much of a cook. Margaret handled all that. Margaret, his wife, dead 5 years now. I'd been at the funeral, stood next to Vanessa while she cried, held her hand during the service, helped Harold greet guests afterward. Back when I was still part of this family. I'm going to the store later. Make you some real food. You don't have to do that. I know, I'm doing it anyway. We drank our coffee in silence for a while. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. Dogs barking, cars starting. The normal sounds of a normal Thursday morning for normal people who weren't professional athletes facing obsolescence. You talked to her? Harold asked eventually. Vanessa. Yeah, she texted. She worries about you. She worries about content. There's a difference. Harold gave me a look. The same look he'd given me 4 years ago when I'd said something stupid about commitment being a trap. The look that said, "You're smarter than that, so stop pretending you're not." You really believe that? He asked. I believe she's good at making people think she cares. Marcus, I've known that girl since she was 10 years old. I watched her cry for 3 days straight when you left. Real crying. The kind you can't fake. The kind that comes from your gut. He set his coffee cup down carefully. Whatever else she is, whatever she's become, she loved you. Still does, probably. Love isn't enough. No, it's not. But it's something. And when you get to be my age, you realize that something is a hell of a lot more than nothing. I wanted to argue. To explain that it was more complicated than that. That love without compatibility is just prolonged suffering. That sometimes walking away is the kindest thing you can do. But Harold was 76 and dying and looking at me with eyes that had seen more than I probably ever would. So instead I said, I'm going to make you breakfast, real breakfast, not cereal. I like cereal. You're eating eggs and toast and you're going to like it. He smiled. You're bossy when you're uncomfortable. I'm efficient. That's what bossy people call it. I cooked. It felt good to do something with my hands that wasn't basketball. To focus on something simple and immediate. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, orange juice, the kind of meal Margaret probably made him every morning before she died. We ate together at the kitchen table. Harold told me about his week. Doctor's appointments, visits from neighbors, the lawn service guy who kept trying to overcharge him. Normal old person stuff. The kind of life I'd never really thought about when I was 22 and convinced I'd play basketball forever. My phone buzzed during breakfast. The game was about to start. I pulled it out without thinking. You need to watch? Harold asked. No, it's fine. Marcus, go watch. I'm not going to be offended. I said it's fine, but it wasn't fine. Because part of me desperately wanted to watch. Wanted to see how they played without me. Wanted to torture myself with proof that they were better off. That I was expendable. That everything I'd feared was true. Living room, Harold said, pushing back from the table. Big screen. We'll watch together. Like we used to. Like we used to. Back when basketball was still fun. When I'd come over on game days and we'd watch film together, Harold pointing out things I'd missed, teaching me to see the game the way coaches see it. Strategic, mathematical, beautiful in its complexity. We settled in, Harold in his recliner, me on the couch with the remote. The pregame show was already running, shots of the arena filling up, interviews with players I'd eaten breakfast with yesterday morning, a graphic showing the starting lineup. Point guard, Rodriguez, the rookie, the kid who couldn't run a pick and roll to save his life, my replacement. He's got potential, Harold said, reading my mind. He's 20. So were you once. I was better. Yeah, you were. Harold adjusted his position, grimacing slightly. But you were also hungrier. This kid, he's already made it, already got the contract, already got the attention. He doesn't have to prove anything. And I did? You were the underdog, second-round pick. Nobody expected you to make the roster. You played like every game might be your last because you believed it might be. He looked at me. When did you stop playing like that? The question hit harder than it should have. When did I stop playing like that? When did basketball become a job instead of a dream? When did I start going through the motions instead of fighting for every possession? I didn't have an answer. The game started. Detroit came out aggressive, pressing full court, trying to speed up the tempo. Rodriguez looked nervous, threw a bad pass on the first possession, got burned on defense on the second. By the 4-minute mark, Coach Rivers called timeout, and I could see him yelling even through the TV. He's panicking, I said. Yep, I wouldn't have panicked. I know. We watched in silence. The game was sloppy. Both teams playing tight, everyone trying to do too much. The kind of basketball that makes coaches pull their hair out. At halftime, we were down 12. "You should be there," Harold said during the break. Rivers made his choice. Rivers is protecting his job. He's going young because that's what management wants. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't matter if it's right. It's happening. So, what are you going to do about it? I looked at him. What can I do? I'm not 20 anymore. I've lost a step. The league's moving on and I'm moving with it. That's quitting. That's reality. Bullshit. Harold leaned forward, his eyes intense. You know what I learned in 40 years of teaching? The difference between people who succeed and people who fail isn't talent. It's not opportunity. It's willingness to fail, to look stupid, to keep trying even when everyone's telling you you're done. He pointed at the TV. That kid out there, he's terrified of failing. You can see it. He's playing not to lose instead of playing to win. You used to play to win. What happened to that guy? What happened to that guy? He got older, got comfortable, got scared. He fell in love with a woman who saw the world differently than he did, and instead of fighting for a compromise, he ran away. He started believing the narrative that veterans were expendable, that youth was everything, that his best days were behind him. He forgot how to want something badly enough to risk losing everything for it. My phone buzzed. Vanessa again. Vanessa. Watching the game. Missing you. I stared at those two words. Missing you. 3 years of silence and now suddenly she was missing me? Or was this just more content? More performance? Another carefully crafted moment designed to make me feel something so she could feel validated? I typed and deleted 5 different responses before settling on, me. They look terrible. Vanessa. They look young. There's a difference. Me. Is there? Vanessa. You'd make them better. You always did. That's your gift, Marcus. You make everyone around you better. Me. Except you. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared. Appeared and disappeared. Finally. That's not true. You made me better in all the ways that mattered. I just couldn't see it then. Before I could respond, Harold started coughing. Not the normal kind. The deep rattling kind that sounds like something breaking inside. I dropped the phone and moved to him, my hand on his back while his whole body shook with the effort. Water, he managed to say. I grabbed his glass and held it while he drank, his hands too shaky to hold it steady. The coughing subsided slowly, leaving him pale and exhausted. Should we go to the hospital? I asked. No. Harold. I said no. It's the pneumonia. It does this. He took another careful sip. I'm fine. He wasn't fine, but he was stubborn, and I understood stubborn. I'd built a career on stubborn. The second half started. I tried to focus on the game, but I kept glancing at Harold, watching his breathing, counting the seconds between breaths like I was running a defensive drill. We lost by 7. Rodriguez finished with 4 points and 6 turnovers. After the game, they interviewed Coach Rivers, who said all the right things about learning experiences and building for the future. Code 4, we're bad, and we know it. My phone lit up with messages from the team group chat, guys commiserating about the loss, talking about dinner plans, making jokes to cover the disappointment. Nobody mentioned me. Nobody said they'd missed having me there. Nobody asked how I was spending my Thanksgiving, because I was already gone, already erased, already irrelevant. I helped Harold upstairs for his afternoon nap, gave him his medications, made sure he was comfortable, told him I'd wake him for dinner. Marcus, he said as I reached the door, that thing you asked earlier, about when you stopped playing like you had something to prove? Yeah? The answer is, you stopped when you started believing you didn't have to prove anything anymore, when you thought you'd made it. But the truth is, we never make it. We just keep proving ourselves until we can't anymore. And the moment we stop trying to prove ourselves is the moment we start dying. He closed his eyes, already drifting toward sleep. I stood in the doorway for a long time, thinking about those words. Then I went downstairs, pulled out my phone, and opened my text thread with Vanessa. Me. I made him worse. That's what you meant earlier. I didn't make you better. I made you worse by walking away. Her response came fast. No. You made me worse by making me think I had to choose between who I was and who you needed me to be. But I made you worse too, by making you feel like you had to compete with my career for my attention. Me. So we just destroyed each other? Vanessa. We were 25 and stupid and convinced love was supposed to be easy. It's not easy, Marcus. It's the hardest thing in the world. And we weren't ready for it. Me. Are we ready now? 3 dots. Appearing and disappearing. My heart was racing like I was playing defense in the 4th quarter. Finally. I don't know. But I know I'm tired of pretending you don't matter. And I know Harold was right to call you. Because if anyone can take care of him, it's you. You've always been better at taking care of people than you give yourself credit for. I read it 3 times, trying to find the performance, the content, the angle. But all I could see was honesty. And maybe that was scarier than anything else. I left for the grocery store around 3 o'clock, after Harold was deep enough asleep that I wouldn't worry about him waking up alone. I left a note on the kitchen table, old school, like we used to do before everyone had phones surgically attached to their hands, telling him where I'd gone and that I'd be back in an hour. The store was chaos. Thanksgiving afternoon, and everyone who'd forgotten something critical was there, moving through the aisles with the desperate energy of people racing against time. I grabbed a cart and pulled up Vanessa's list on my phone. She'd sent it last night, before I'd even agreed to come, like she'd known I would, like she still knew me well enough to predict my decisions. Turkey breast already cooked, stuffing mix, sweet potatoes, green beans, cranberry sauce, all the traditional Thanksgiving staples, carefully itemized with brand preferences and cooking instructions. The list of a woman who'd grown up in this house, who knew exactly what Harold liked, who was trying to take care of him from 1,000 miles away, because that was the only way she knew how. I was halfway through the produce section when I heard my name. Marcus? Marcus Chen? I turned. A woman in her 50s, wearing a cardigan and a warm smile. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. I'm sorry, I don't... Julie Patterson. I taught with Harold for 20 years. Retired now, but I still see him at the senior center sometimes. Her smile widened. He talks about you all the time. His basketball star. Former basketball star, I wanted to correct her, but instead I just smiled and said, "How's he doing at the senior center?" Her expression shifted. "Oh, honey, he hasn't been there in months. Not since he got sick. We all keep asking him to come back, but you know Harold. Stubborn as they come. Months. He'd been isolated for months, and I hadn't known. Hadn't called. Hadn't checked. I'm staying with him for the weekend," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, making sure he eats real food. "That's wonderful. He needs someone looking after him." She hesitated, then added, "We were all so sad when you and Vanessa ended things. Harold took it hard. Lost both his wife and his future son-in-law within a year. That's a lot for anyone. Future son-in-law. The phrase hit like a defensive foul I didn't see coming. "Yeah," I managed. "It was complicated. It always is." She patted my arm. "But you're here now. That matters more than you probably realize." She moved on, pushing her cart toward the checkout. I stood there in the middle of the produce section, surrounded by people grabbing last-minute ingredients, and felt the full weight of my absence hit me. Months. Harold had been alone for months. While I'd been focused on my declining stats and my wounded pride and my carefully maintained distance from anything that reminded me of Vanessa, Harold had been sitting in that house, alone, sick, waiting for someone to care enough to check on him. And when he'd needed help, Vanessa had to call me, had to beg me, because I'd been too much of a coward to reach out first. I finished shopping on autopilot, my mind replaying every conversation I'd avoided, every text I'd ignored, every time I'd driven past this neighborhood taking the long way to avoid memories. The checkout line was long. I stood there with my cart full of Thanksgiving food, watching families argue about who forgot the pie, listening to kids beg for candy, surrounded by the ordinary chaos of ordinary lives. My phone buzzed. Not Vanessa this time. My agent, Marcus Reeves. We'd been friends since college, which made conversations like the one we were about to have even more painful. Reeves. "Rivers called. They want to meet Monday at 10. It's about your contract situation." Contract situation. Professionals speak for, they're cutting you loose and trying to figure out how to do it without bad publicity. Me. "What are they offering?" Reeves. "We don't know yet, but read between the lines, man. They're bringing you in on a Monday morning during Thanksgiving weekend. That's not a good sign." Me. "So what do I do?" Reeves. "Come in ready to fight, or come in ready to negotiate an exit. Your call. But you need to decide which version of Marcus Chen is walking into that room. Which version of Marcus Chen, the fighter or the quitter? The guy who proved everyone wrong or the guy who accepted defeat gracefully? I'd spent my whole career being the fighter. The second-round pick who wasn't supposed to make the roster. The undersized guard who wasn't supposed to defend anyone. The kid from a no-name college who wasn't supposed to last 3 years, let alone 12. But I was tired. So incredibly tired. Me. "I'll think about it." Reeves. "Don't think too long. Monday's 3 days away." I paid for the groceries and loaded everything into my car. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful. if you had the energy to notice. I just felt empty. The drive back to Harold's house took 15 minutes. I used to make this drive all the time, Friday nights after practice, Sunday mornings before brunch, random Tuesday evenings when Vanessa texted saying her mom made too much lasagna and did I want some. I'd belonged here once, in this neighborhood, in that house, in that life. Now I was just a guest, a temporary caretaker, someone passing through on his way to somewhere else. Harold was awake when I got back, sitting at the kitchen table with a photo album open in front of him. He looked up when I came in, arms full of grocery bags. You bought out the store. I bought Thanksgiving dinner. There's a difference. I started unloading bags onto the counter. When did you stop going to the senior center? He was quiet for a moment. Julie Patterson found you. She's worried about you. Everyone's worried about me. I'm old and sick. That's what people do with old sick people. They worry. He turned a page in the album. Doesn't mean I need to be everyone's project. You're not a project, Harold. Then what am I? A responsibility? A burden? An excuse for you and Vanessa to reconnect? The bitterness in his voice surprised me. I stopped unpacking and turned to look at him. You think that's what this is? Isn't it? He looked up, his eyes tired but sharp. She calls you. You come running. Not because you want to see me, because you want to see her. Or because you feel guilty about not wanting to see her. Either way, I'm just the reason, not the point. That's not true, isn't it? He closed the album. You haven't called in 3 years, Marcus. 3 years. And suddenly I'm sick and she asks for help and here you are, playing house in my kitchen pretending we're still family. The words stung because they were partially true. I had come because Vanessa asked. I had stayed away because it hurt too much to be here. I had used Harold as an excuse to avoid dealing with my own guilt. But that wasn't the whole truth. I stayed away because I was ashamed, I said quietly. Because I loved you like a father and I walked away from your daughter and I didn't know how to face you after that. I didn't know how to look you in the eye and explain that I was too scared and too proud and too stupid to fight for what we had. So I just didn't look. I didn't call. I pretended you didn't exist because that was easier than admitting I'd failed. Harold was silent for a long time. Then, you think you're the only person who's ever walked away from something they loved because they were scared? I don't know, maybe. I walked away from teaching. Did Vanessa ever tell you that? I shook my head. 25 years in, I was done. Burned out. Convinced I wasn't making a difference anymore. The kids were different. The administration was different. Everything felt impossible. He opened the album again, showing me a photo of him in a classroom, surrounded by students. I put in my resignation. Told Margaret I was quitting. Told everyone I was done. What changed? Margaret asked me what I was going to do with the rest of my life, and I realized I didn't have an answer. Because teaching wasn't just what I did. It was who I was. And walking away from it meant walking away from myself. He looked at me. So I went back. Taught for 15 more years, some of my best years. Because I stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be present. Present. The word echoed in my head. When was the last time I was fully present? Not thinking about the next game or the next contract or the next disaster. Just here, in the moment. Aware of what I had, instead of what I was losing. I don't know how to be present anymore, I admitted. Then learn. Harold stood up slowly, using the table for support. Start by making me dinner. Real dinner. None of this store-bought turkey nonsense. I want the real thing. Harold, I bought everything on Vanessa's list. I don't care what Vanessa's list says. I want what Margaret used to make. Roasted turkey breast with herbs, homemade stuffing, sweet potato casserole with the marshmallow topping, the real Thanksgiving meal. He smiled slightly. And I want you to call her while you're cooking. Put her on speaker. Let her talk you through it like she used to talk you through fixing things around the house. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't remember asking if you thought it was a good idea. I'm old and dying and it's Thanksgiving and I want my family together, even if they're not in the same room. He headed toward the living room. I'll be watching football. You'll be cooking. She'll be helping. And for one night, we're going to pretend like the last 3 years didn't happen. He left me standing in the kitchen, surrounded by grocery bags and impossible expectations. I put away the groceries. Took out the ingredients, stared at them like they might arrange themselves into a meal if I waited long enough. Then I did something I'd been avoiding for 3 years. I called Vanessa. She answered on the first ring. Marcus? Is everything okay? Is Harold? He's fine. He's watching football. I took a breath. He wants me to cook Thanksgiving dinner. The real thing, like your mom used to make. Oh, a pause. Marcus, you can't cook. I know. The last time you tried to cook, you set off the fire alarm making toast. I remember. So why are you calling me? Because Harold wants you to walk me through it. On speaker. While I cook. The words came out faster than I intended. He wants the family together. Even if we're not in the same room. Silence on the other end. I could hear music in the background. Voices. She was at some event. Some brand thing. Living her life. Give me 20 minutes, she said finally. I need to get back to my hotel room. I can't do this with people around. You don't have to... 20 minutes, Marcus. Don't start without me. She hung up. I stood in Harold's kitchen, phone in my hand, wondering what I'd just agreed to. This was a terrible idea. Cooking together virtually, pretending we could be normal, acting like we hadn't spent 3 years avoiding each other. But Harold wanted this, and maybe I owed him this, after 3 years of absence. After months of him being alone, after all the ways I'd failed to show up, I could give him one night, one meal, one attempt at something that looked like family, even if it killed me. I started preparing ingredients, washing vegetables, reading recipes on my phone, trying to remember anything Margaret had taught me during those Sunday dinners when she'd let me help in the kitchen, while Vanessa and Harold argued about politics in the living room. My phone rang exactly 20 minutes later. Okay, Vanessa said. I'm here. Tell me what you've got. I looked at the counter. Turkey breast, stuffing mix, sweet potatoes, various vegetables, a disturbing number of herbs I don't know the names of. Send me a picture. I did. Waited while she assessed the situation. Okay, this is doable, but you're going to have to listen to exactly what I say. No improvising, no creative interpretation. You follow instructions. Got it? Got it. And Marcus? Yeah? Thank you for doing this, for being there. I know this isn't easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. She laughed. Soft. Real. The kind of laugh I used to hear before everything got complicated. Since when did you become philosophical? Since I started spending time with your stepfather again. He's been hitting me with wisdom all day. That sounds like Harold. I could hear her moving around her hotel room. Okay, first things first. Preheat the oven to 375. Then we're going to make the herb butter for the turkey. Sorisai and just like that, we were cooking together. Her voice in my ear guiding me through each step, telling me when to add more butter, when to season more aggressively, when to trust my instincts, even though we both knew my instincts about cooking were terrible. We fell into a rhythm, her talking, me listening, both of us pretending this was normal, that we did this all the time, that 3 years hadn't passed, that we hadn't destroyed something that could have been beautiful. How's Miami? I asked while the turkey was in the oven. Exhausting. 3 meetings today, photo shoot tomorrow, another event Saturday night. She sighed. It's always like this around the holidays. Everyone wants content. Everyone wants the perfect Thanksgiving post. Sounds terrible. It's my job. Doesn't mean it's not terrible. She was quiet for a moment. You're right. It is terrible sometimes. But it's also amazing sometimes. I built something, Marcus. Something that's mine. Something that matters to people. I never said it didn't matter. You didn't have to say it. I could see it in your face every time I posted something. Every time I chose a sponsorship meeting over dinner. Every time I brought the camera into our private moments. You thought it was shallow, narcissistic, a waste of time. I thought it was taking you away from me. The honesty surprised us both. It was, she said quietly. But you were already gone. Basketball took you away first. I was just catching up. We didn't talk for a while after that. Just the sounds of me cooking, her breathing on the other end of the line, the comfortable silence of people who used to know how to be quiet together. The stuffing's burning, she said suddenly. What? No, it's not. I can't smell. I opened the oven. Smoke poured out. Damn it. I told you to set a timer. You said 20 minutes. It's only been 15. Marcus, I said 15 minutes and check it. 20 minutes total. That's not what you said. That's exactly what I said. We argued about the stuffing, like we used to argue about everything, small and pointless and somehow deeply meaningful, because it meant we were still talking, still engaging, still caring enough to argue. I saved the stuffing, barely, made the sweet potato casserole with her detailed instructions, set the table while she told me about her day, about the shoot that went long, about the influencer who'd had a meltdown over lighting, and somewhere in the middle of cooking Thanksgiving dinner while my ex-girlfriend walked me through recipes from 1,000 miles away, I realized something. I missed this. Not just her, but this. The simple act of sharing space, even virtual space, the comfort of someone who knew my rhythms, who could tell when I was frustrated before I said anything, who could make me laugh even when I was determined to stay angry. I'd spent 3 years convinced I was better off alone, convinced that solitude was safer than vulnerability, that independence was more valuable than connection. But standing in Harold's kitchen, following Vanessa's instructions, listening to her laugh when I inevitably messed something up, I felt more present than I had in months, maybe years. "Okay," she said finally. "Everything should be ready. How does it look?" I surveyed the table. Turkey that actually looked edible, stuffing that was only slightly burned, sweet potato casserole with perfectly browned marshmallows, green beans that were mostly the right color. "It looks like Thanksgiving," I said. "Take a picture. Send it to me." I did. "Marcus Chen," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "You actually did it. You cooked an entire Thanksgiving dinner without burning down the house. I had help. You had instructions. You did the work." I was about to respond when Harold appeared in the doorway, looking at the table with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Is that my Vanessa on the phone?" he asked. "Hi, Harold," she said through the speaker. "Did he do good?" "He did great." Harold walked to the table slowly, running his hand over the back of a chair. "It looks like when Margaret used to make it." There was something in his voice, something broken and grateful and deeply sad. "I wish I was there," Vanessa said quietly. "Me too, baby. Me too." We stood there for a moment, the three of us connected by a phone line and a meal, and the complicated love of people who'd been family once and didn't quite know how to stop being family even after everything fell apart. "We should eat before it gets cold," I said finally. "You two enjoy," Vanessa said. "I need to get ready for dinner here. But Marcus? Yeah? Thank you. For tonight, for all of this. It means more than you know." She hung up before I could respond. Harold and I sat down at the table. I served him, watched him take his first bite, saw his eyes close as he chewed slowly, tasting memories along with the food. "She was right," he said. "You did good." We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of knowing someone, from shared history, from love that doesn't need words. My phone buzzed halfway through the meal. Text from Vanessa. Just a photo. Her, in her hotel room in Miami, holding up a glass of wine. The caption, "Cheers to family, even when they're far away." I looked at the photo for a long time. Her smile, her eyes, the way she was trying so hard to be okay with being alone on Thanksgiving. Before I could overthink it, I took a photo of me and Harold at the table, sent it back with no caption. She responded immediately with a heart emoji. Nothing else. Just that simple red heart. And somehow, it felt like progress. "You still love her," Harold said, not looking up from his plate. "It's complicated. Love always is, but that doesn't make it less true." He took another bite. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do. You're just scared to admit it." He was right. I did know. I'd known since I walked into this house yesterday. Maybe I'd known for 3 years and just been too proud to acknowledge it. I still loved her, probably never stopped. Just buried it under layers of hurt and pride and the desperate need to protect myself from more pain. But love doesn't disappear because you ignore it. It just waits, patient, stubborn, ready to destroy you the moment you let your guard down. And sitting in Harold's kitchen, eating a Thanksgiving dinner I'd cooked with help from 1,000 miles away, I felt my guard crumbling, felt the truth becoming unavoidable. I still loved her, and that was the most terrifying thing I'd felt in years. Friday morning started with Harold's coughing. I was awake instantly, my body trained by years of game day routines to go from sleep to full awareness in seconds. The clock on the nightstand read 4:47 a.m. I'd been sleeping in the guest room, Vanessa's old room, though I tried not to think about that, and I could hear Harold through the walls, the deep, wrenching coughs that sounded like his lungs were trying to escape his body. I was in his room in under 10 seconds. He was sitting up in bed, doubled over, his whole body shaking with the force of it. I grabbed the water glass from his nightstand, put my hand on his back, and waited. There was nothing else to do. Just be there. Just witness. When the coughing finally subsided, he was pale and sweating, his breathing shallow and labored. "Hospital," I said. "Now." "No." "Harold." I said no. He took the water with shaking hands, sipped carefully. "It's the pneumonia. It does this. I have an inhaler. Top drawer." I found the inhaler and watched him use it. 2 puffs. Slow breaths. His color started returning gradually, but he still looked like he'd run a marathon. "This is getting worse," I said. "I'm old. Everything's getting worse." He leaned back against the pillows, exhausted. I'm not dying today, Marcus. Just old and sick. There's a difference. How do you know? Because I've been old and sick for 6 months. I know what dying feels like. This isn't it. I wanted to argue, to insist, to throw him over my shoulder and drive him to the emergency room whether he wanted to go or not. But I'd learned something in 12 years of professional basketball. You can't make someone do something they're fundamentally opposed to. You can only be there when they're ready. So I stayed, sat in the chair next to his bed while his breathing normalized, watched the darkness outside his window slowly give way to gray morning light. Tell me about the meeting, Harold said finally. What meeting? The one with your coach on Monday. The one you've been stressing about since yesterday. I haven't been stressing. Marcus, I taught high school for 40 years. I know what stress looks like, and you've been carrying it around like a weight on your shoulders since you walked in that door. He adjusted his position carefully. So tell me, what's happening with the team? I didn't want to talk about it. Didn't want to admit out loud that my career was probably over. That at 34, I was already obsolete. That everything I'd worked for was being taken away by kids who hadn't earned it. But Harold was looking at me with those steady eyes that saw through every defense I tried to put up. They're moving on, I said quietly. Going younger. I think Monday's meeting is about negotiating my exit. You think, or you know? My agent thinks, which is close enough to knowing. And what do you want? The question surprised me. What do I want? Yes, not what they want, not what makes sense financially, not what's easiest. What do you want? I'd been asked a lot of questions in my career. Questions about strategy and play calling and defensive schemes. Questions about injuries and contracts and free agency. Questions about leadership and mentorship and legacy. But nobody had asked me what I wanted in a long time, maybe ever. I want to matter, I said finally. I want to walk into that gym and have it mean something that I'm there. I want to play basketball the way I used to play it, like every possession is life or death, like I have something to prove, like I'm hungry. I looked down at my hands, but I don't know if I have that anymore. The hunger, the fire. Maybe they're right to move on. Maybe I'm just taking up space. That's fear talking. That's reality talking. No, reality is that you're 34 years old with 12 years of experience and more basketball knowledge than half the coaching staff. Reality is that you make everyone around you better when you're engaged. Reality is that you're choosing to believe you're done because that's easier than fighting to stay relevant. Harold leaned forward. You know what fear looks like in basketball? What? A player who's afraid to shoot, who passes up the open look because they're scared of missing, who plays not to lose instead of playing to win. He pointed at me. That's what you've been doing with your career, with Vanessa, with your life. You're passing up every shot because you're terrified of missing. The words hit harder than I expected, because he was right. I'd been playing not to lose for 3 years, staying safe, avoiding risk, protecting myself from failure by never trying hard enough to succeed. What if I miss anyway? I asked. Then you miss. But at least you took the shot. At least you can say you tried. You know what's worse than failing? Spending the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you just had the courage to try. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. Dogs barking, garage doors opening, the normal sounds of a normal Friday morning. Except nothing about this weekend was normal. I'm scared, I admitted. Of the meeting, of what comes next, of being irrelevant. Everyone's scared. The question is whether you let the fear make your decisions for you. My phone buzzed. Text from Vanessa. Vanessa, early flight back to the hotel, couldn't sleep. Keep thinking about last night, about cooking with you, about how easy it was to fall back into that rhythm. My heart rate picked up. I typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on me. It was easy. Maybe too easy. Vanessa. Is that a bad thing? Me. I don't know. Is it? Vanessa. I've spent 3 years convincing myself that we were wrong for each other, that breaking up was the right call, that we wanted different things. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. But last night felt more right than anything I've done in 3 years. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Is that her? Harold asked. Yeah. What's she saying? That last night felt right. And what are you going to say back? I don't know. Marcus, stop thinking like a player protecting a lead. Start thinking like a player who's down by 2 with 30 seconds left. What would you do on the court? Take the shot. So, take the shot. I looked at Harold, at his tired eyes and his knowing smile, at the man who'd been more of a father to me than my own father had ever been. Then I typed, me. It felt right to me too, and that scares the hell out of me. Because last time we tried this, we destroyed each other. What makes you think it would be different now? Vanessa, because we're different now. We're not 25 anymore. We're not kids playing at adult relationships. We've both been through enough to know what matters. And maybe what matters is that we still care, that we still make each other laugh, that we still know how to cook Thanksgiving dinner together even when we're 1,000 miles apart. Me. That's not enough to build a relationship on, Vanessa. No. But it's enough to start a conversation, and we haven't had a real conversation in 3 years. Maybe it's time. Me. When do you get back from Miami? Vanessa. Sunday night. Why? Me. Because I think you're right. We should talk. In person. Not through text messages where we can hide behind edited thoughts and careful phrasing. Real talk. Face to face. The way we should have talked 3 years ago instead of running away. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, okay, Sunday night. My place, 8 p.m. My stomach dropped. Her place, the apartment she'd bought after we split. The one I'd never seen, the one that represented everything she'd built without me. Me. Okay, Sunday, 8 p.m. Vanessa. Marcus? Me. Yeah? Vanessa. I'm terrified. Me. Me too. Vanessa. Good. At least we're on the same page. I set the phone down, my hands actually shaking. What had I just agreed to? A conversation that could either restart something I'd spent 3 years trying to forget, or confirm that walking away was the right decision, and we were both just nostalgic idiots. You look like you're about to throw up, Harold observed. I might. That's how you know it matters. If it didn't scare you, it wouldn't be worth doing. He smiled. Now help me downstairs. I want coffee and I want to watch SportsCenter and I want you to stop looking at me like I'm going to die if you blink. I helped him down the stairs, one careful step at a time. He was weaker than yesterday, moving slower, but still stubborn enough to refuse help when we reached the kitchen. I made coffee. We sat at the table. The morning light came through the windows, soft and gray, illuminating the dust particles floating in the air. Everything felt suspended, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. My phone rang. Coach Rivers. I looked at the screen, my finger hovering over the accept button. Answer it, Harold said. It's my day off. It's your career. Answer it. I answered. Marcus! Rivers' voice was carefully neutral, the tone he used when he was about to deliver bad news. Hope I'm not interrupting your Thanksgiving. No, Coach. What's up? Listen, about Monday's meeting. I wanted to give you a heads up. He paused, and I could picture him in his office, probably staring at game film, trying to figure out how to phrase this. Management wants to have a conversation about your role going forward. And I'll be honest with you, it's not the conversation you want to have. My chest tightened. They're waiving me. Not exactly. They're offering a restructure, reduced minutes, mentor role, significant pay cut. Basically, they want you to transition into a coaching position while still being on the roster. A coaching position, I repeated slowly. You'd be working with the young guys, especially Rodriguez, teaching him the stuff you know, running practices, being a leader in the locker room. Another pause. It's actually a good opportunity, Marcus. A lot of veterans would kill for a chance to transition like this instead of getting cut outright. A good opportunity. Translation. You should be grateful we're not just dumping you. What if I say no? Then we negotiate a buyout and you become a free agent. You might catch on somewhere else. But at your age, with your recent numbers, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I was finished as a player. They were offering me a dignity exit, a chance to stay in the game without the embarrassment of being cut. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. That's why we're meeting Monday. But Marcus, think seriously about what you want your next 5 years to look like. Because playing time is going to get harder to come by. This might be the best option you're going to get. He hung up. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode if I moved too fast. Well, Harold asked, they want to make me a coach, keep me on the roster but transition me out of playing. And I don't know if I can do that. Watch from the sidelines, teach other guys how to do what I used to do, except that I'm done as a player. So say no, walk away, become a free agent, see if someone else wants you. Nobody wants a 34-year-old guard who's lost a step. Then maybe it's time to accept that this chapter is ending. The question is, what's the next chapter? I looked at him, at this man who'd taught for 40 years and retired, and then came back because he wasn't ready to stop being who he was. What if I don't want there to be a next chapter? What if I want to keep playing until someone physically drags me off the court? then you're going to be miserable, and you're going to end your career bitter and broken instead of on your own terms. Harold reached across the table, put his hand on mine. Marcus, I watched you play for 12 years. I've seen you at your best, and I've seen you this past season. You're not the same player anymore, and that's okay. That's not failure. That's evolution. The question is whether you're evolved enough to accept it. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn. The same way you learned everything else. By trying, by failing, by getting back up and trying again. He squeezed my hand. You're more than basketball, Marcus. You've always been more than basketball. You just forgot that somewhere along the way. We finished our coffee in silence. I cleaned up the kitchen while Harold watched SportsCenter, the familiar voices of analysts breaking down games I should have been playing in. The day passed slowly. I helped Harold with his medications, made lunch, watched him nap, answered texts from teammates asking about Thanksgiving plans, while carefully not mentioning that I was spending mine alone with my ex-girlfriend's dying stepfather. Around 4 o'clock, Vanessa called. Not texted, called. I answered on the second ring. Hey, she sounded tired. How's he doing? Had a bad coughing fit this morning, refusing to go to the hospital, being stubborn. That's Harold. I could hear traffic in the background. I'm heading to dinner, another brand thing, but I wanted to check in, and I wanted to say thank you again for last night. You already thanked me. I know, but I keep thinking about it, about how we used to cook together, about how I forgot that we were good at that, at being together in simple ways, before everything got complicated. It's always been complicated, V. We just didn't want to see it. Maybe. Or maybe we made it more complicated than it needed to be. Maybe we let the outside stuff, the careers and the media and the pressure, matter more than the inside stuff, the actual us. I heard a car horn in the background. Voices. She was late for something. You should go, I said. I don't want to. I'd rather stay on the phone with you and avoid this dinner entirely. Since when do you avoid work? Since I realized that work is just work, and some things matter more. She paused. I'm tired, Marcus. Tired of the hustle. Tired of the performance. Tired of pretending I'm okay with being alone because I'm too proud to admit I miss you. My breath caught. Vanessa, I know, Sunday. We'll talk then. But I needed you to know that before I walked into another room full of people who want something from me. I needed to tell someone the truth, and you're the only person I've ever been able to tell the truth to. Even when the truth was ugly? Especially when the truth was ugly. She laughed softly. We were good at that, remember? Being honest. Being real. Before we started performing for each other instead of with each other. I remember. Good. Hold on to that. Because I'm going to need you to be honest with me on Sunday. Brutally, painfully honest. No protecting my feelings. No saying what you think I want to hear. Just truth. I can do that. I know you can. That's why I'm terrified. She hung up. I stood in Harold's kitchen, phone in my hand, heart racing like I'd just played overtime. Sunday. 2 days away. A conversation that could change everything or confirm that nothing had really changed at all. Harold appeared in the doorway, moving slowly but steadily. She called, he observed. Yeah, and we're talking on Sunday. Really talking. About time. He moved to his recliner, settling in with a soft grunt. You know what your problem is, Marcus. I'm sure you're going to tell me. You think love is supposed to be easy, that if it's the right person, everything just works. But that's not how it works. Love is work. Constant work. Choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. You and Margaret made it look easy, because you only saw the finished product. You didn't see the fights, the compromises, the times we almost walked away because it would have been easier than staying. He looked at me. We made it 43 years. You know how? By deciding every single day that we were worth the effort, even on the days when we weren't sure we liked each other very much. I don't know if Vanessa and I can do that. You won't know until you try, but you have to actually try. Not half try. Not try while protecting yourself. Really try. All in. No safety net. All in. The way I used to play basketball. Before the fear set in. My phone buzzed. Text from my agent. Reeves. Thinking about Monday. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit when it's time to move on. Both in basketball and in life. I showed Harold the message. He read it and nodded. Smart man. So you think I should take the coaching offer? I think you should stop asking other people what you should do and start listening to what you actually want. Deep down. Past the fear and the pride and the ego. What does Marcus Chen actually want? I sat down on the couch, dropping my head back against the cushions. What did I want? I wanted to matter, to feel valuable, to wake up knowing I had a purpose beyond filling space. I wanted to stop running from difficulty, to stop choosing safety over risk. I wanted to have a conversation with Vanessa that didn't end with both of us hurt and angry and convinced we were better off apart. I wanted to walk into that meeting on Monday and be honest about what I could and couldn't do instead of pretending I was still 25. I wanted to stop being so damn tired all the time. I want to stop being afraid, I said quietly. Of what? Everything. Failure. Irrelevance. Being vulnerable. Getting hurt. Being alone. I looked at Harold. I want to stop making decisions based on fear and start making them based on what actually matters. So what actually matters? People, relationships, being present instead of hiding, taking the shot even if I might miss. I stood up, suddenly restless. But I don't know how to do that. I've been afraid for so long I don't remember how to be brave. Start small. Take one brave action, then another, then another. Pretty soon being brave becomes the default instead of the exception. What's the first brave action? Harold smiled. I think you already know. Sunday. The conversation with Vanessa. The truth-telling. The vulnerability. And then Monday. The meeting with Rivers. The decision about my future. The acceptance of reality. 2 days. 2 impossible conversations. 2 chances to stop running and start choosing. I'm going to screw this up, I said. Probably. But at least you'll screw it up while trying instead of while running away. That night, after Harold was asleep, I sat in the living room with the lights off, staring at the photo on the mantel. Me and Harold, arms around each other, grinning like idiots. I picked up my phone and did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I scrolled through Vanessa's Instagram, 3 years of her life, documented in carefully curated squares, photos of her at events, with friends, traveling, working, building an empire. But the more I scrolled, the more I saw what I'd missed before. She was alone in most of the photos. Even when she was surrounded by people, there was a distance in her eyes, a performance. The same performance I saw in myself when I did media appearances, and there, buried about 6 months back, was a photo I almost missed. Her in a coffee shop, no makeup, hair messy, staring at something off camera. The caption? Sometimes the hardest thing is admitting you're not okay. Working on it. 400,000 likes. Thousands of comments telling her she was brave for being vulnerable. But all I could see was the truth behind the performance. She was tired too. Tired of pretending. Tired of being strong. Tired of being alone. Just like me. I opened our text thread and typed, me. I've been scrolling through your Instagram. That photo from 6 months ago. The coffee shop one. I saw you. The real you. Behind all the curation and performance. And I want you to know, that version of you, the tired, not okay, messy-haired version, that's the one I fell in love with. That's the one I miss. And if we're going to have this conversation on Sunday, I need that version to show up. Not the influencer, not the brand, just Vanessa, the real one. The one who used to eat cereal for dinner and cry during rom-coms and laugh so hard she'd snort. Can you do that? Can you show up as the real you? I hit send before I could overthink it. 3 dots appeared immediately. Vanessa. Only if you show up as the real you, too. Not the veteran trying to prove he's still got it. Not the guy protecting his ego. Just Marcus. The one who used to sing off-key in the shower and leave his socks everywhere and call me at 2 a.m. just to talk. Can you do that? Me. I can try. Vanessa. Trying is all I'm asking. Me. Sunday, 8 p.m. Real talk. No performance. Vanessa. Sunday, 8 p.m. I'm already terrified. Me. Good. That means it matters. Vanessa. It's always mattered, Marcus. That was never the problem. The problem was that we were too scared to admit how much it mattered. Too scared to fight for it when fighting got hard. Me. So this time we fight? Vanessa. This time we fight. I set the phone down and looked at the photo on the mantel again. 2 days. 2 impossible conversations. 2 chances to stop living in fear and start living in truth. I didn't know if I could do it, but for the first time in 3 years, I was willing to try. And maybe that was enough. Maybe trying was always enough. Saturday arrived with rain. I woke to the sound of it against the windows, steady and relentless. The kind of rain that makes you want to stay in bed all day, wrapped in blankets, hiding from the world and all the difficult decisions waiting outside. But Harold was already awake. I could hear him moving around downstairs, the shuffle of his slippers on the hardwood floor, the click of the coffee maker starting up. I found him in the kitchen, standing at the window, watching the rain. "Morning," I said. He didn't turn around. Margaret loved rain. Used to say it was the earth getting a fresh start, washing away all the old mistakes so you could make new ones. I poured myself coffee, joined him at the window. The backyard was gray and wet, the trees dripping, everything looking tired and worn down. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Old, tired, surprisingly alive." He finally looked at me. "You sleep?" "Not really. Thinking about tomorrow?" "Tomorrow, Monday, everything." I took a sip of coffee. "I don't know how to do this, Harold. Either conversation. I don't know how to walk into River's office and accept that my career is over. And I don't know how to sit across from Vanessa and be honest about everything I've been too scared to say for 3 years. You do it the same way you did everything else in your life. One step at a time. One decision at a time. One moment of courage at a time." He moved to the table, sitting down carefully. "You think I knew how to teach when I started? How to stand in front of 30 teenagers and make them care about algebra? I was terrified. Every single day for the first 5 years. But I showed up anyway. And eventually, showing up became who I was. It's different. It's not. Fear is fear. Courage is courage. The circumstances change, but the choice is always the same. Do you run, or do you stay?" I sat across from him, cradling the warm mug in my hands. Outside, the rain kept falling. Steady, relentless, washing everything clean. "I've been running for 3 years, I said quietly. "I know. From Vanessa, from you, from myself, from the reality that I wasn't going to be young and invincible forever." I looked down at my coffee. I thought if I just kept moving, kept focusing on basketball, kept my head down and worked hard, everything else would sort itself out. But it didn't. It just got worse. The distance got bigger. The silence got louder. And now I'm here, 34 years old, facing the end of everything I built, and I have no idea who I am without it. Harold reached across the table, put his hand over mine. His skin was paper thin, spotted with age, the hand of a man who'd lived long enough to understand that most of what we worry about doesn't matter as much as we think it does. "You're Marcus Chen," he said simply. "The kid who called me sir for 6 months until I told him to stop. The man who helped me fix my fence on a Saturday morning when he could have been doing anything else. The person who made my stepdaughter laugh so hard she'd cry. The friend who showed up when I needed him, even after 3 years of silence. That's who you are. Basketball is what you do, but it's not who you are. What if I don't know how to be that person without basketball? Then you learn. The same way you learn to shoot free throws and run plays and read defenses. You practice. You fail. You get back up. You try again." My phone buzzed. Text from Vanessa. "Vanessa, can't stop thinking about tomorrow. Keep trying to plan what I'm going to say, but everything sounds rehearsed. How do you have an unrehearsed conversation about something this important?" Me. "You show up and let it happen. No script, no plan, just truth." Vanessa. "What if the truth is ugly?" Me. "Then it's ugly, but at least it's real." Vanessa. "I'm scared the truth is that we're better off apart, that we only work in memory and nostalgia, that trying again would be a mistake." Me. "I'm scared of the same thing." Vanessa. "But you're still coming?" Me. "I'm still coming, because we need to know, one way or the other. We need to stop living in this in-between space where we're not together but not really apart either. We need an ending or a beginning, but we need something." Vanessa. "Okay, tomorrow, 8 p.m. No scripts, no performance, just us." Me. "Just us." I set the phone down. Harold was watching me with those knowing eyes. "She's scared too," he said. "I know." "That's good. Means you're both taking this seriously." He stood slowly, using the table for support. "Come on. There's something I want to show you." I followed him to the garage, a place I hadn't been since before the breakup. Harold flipped on the light, revealing the organized chaos of a lifetime of accumulation. Tools, boxes, old furniture waiting to be donated. And in the corner, covered with a tarp, something I'd forgotten existed. Harold pulled off the tarp, revealing a basketball hoop, the portable kind with a base that you fill with water or sand. The backboard was old, the net frayed, but it was intact. "Remember this?" Harold asked. I did. Margaret had bought it for Harold's 60th birthday as a joke. He'd set it up in the driveway, and we'd spent countless summer evenings shooting around, him in his old man shoes and knee brace, me trying to teach him proper form while he insisted his flat-footed jumper was perfectly fine. "I thought you got rid of this." "Couldn't. Too many memories." He ran his hand over the rim. "Help me set it up. One last time." "Harold, it's raining." "I know. Do it anyway. So we did. Together, we dragged the hoop out of the garage and into the driveway. The rain soaked us immediately, cold and sharp, but Harold didn't seem to care. He just stood there, looking at the hoop like it was an old friend he hadn't seen in years. I found a basketball in the garage, wet and slippery, and brought it out. "You can't play in this weather," I said. "You're sick." "I'm dying. There's a difference. And dying people get to do what they want." He held out his hand for the ball. "Besides, I'm not playing. I'm teaching. One last lesson." I passed him the ball. He held it, getting a feel for the weight, the texture, the familiar roundness that every basketball player knows intimately. Then he shot. From the free throw line, if you could call the crack in the driveway pavement a free throw line, the same flat-footed, technically incorrect form he'd always used. The ball swished through the net. "You see that?" he said, grinning. "Still got it." I rebounded the ball, passed it back. He shot again, another swish. "Harold, shoot with me, like we used to." So I did. We stood in the rain, taking turns shooting, not keeping score, not competing, just playing basketball the way it's supposed to be played. For joy, for connection, for the simple pleasure of the ball going through the net. Harold's shots got shorter, his movements slower, but he kept shooting, kept grinning, kept living despite the rain and the sickness and the mortality that hung over him like a shadow. "You know why I love teaching?" he asked after his 10th shot. "Because every day was a chance to make a difference, to connect with a kid who needed it, to see someone understand something they thought they'd never understand, to matter in someone's life, even for just a moment. You mattered in a lot of lives." "I know, and so did you." He caught my pass, held the ball. "You mattered to your teammates, to the coaches who believed in you, to the fans who wore your jersey, to me, to Vanessa. You mattered, Marcus. You still matter. The question is whether you're going to keep mattering in the same way, or whether you're brave enough to matter in a new way. What if I'm not ready for a new way?" "Nobody's ever ready. You just do it anyway." He shot. The ball bounced off the rim, and I rebounded it. "Tomorrow, when you sit down with Vanessa, you're going to want to protect yourself, to hold back, to keep some part of you safe in case it doesn't work out. Don't do that. Give her everything, all the truth, all the fear, all the love, even if it means getting hurt, especially if it means getting hurt. And Monday, with Rivers, same thing. Give him the truth, not the version of yourself you think he wants to see, the real version, the one who's tired and scared and doesn't know what comes next. Let him see that person, and then make a decision based on what you actually want, not what you think you should want." I shot. The ball went through the net with a satisfying swish. The rain kept falling. "I want to keep playing," I admitted. "I want to prove I'm not done. I want to show everyone that I've still got something left." "Why?" "Because basketball is all I know. It's all I've ever been good at. Without it, I'm just—" I stopped, the words catching in my throat. "Just what?" "Just me. And I don't know if that's enough." Harold walked over, put his wet hand on my shoulder. "Marcus Chen, without basketball, is a good man. A kind man. A man who shows up for people even when it's hard. A man who can cook Thanksgiving dinner and change tires and make an old man laugh. That man is enough. That man has always been enough. You just forgot to see it." The rain ran down my face, mixing with tears. I didn't realize I was crying. "I'm scared," I said. "I know, but you're here anyway. That's what courage looks like. Not the absence of fear, just the willingness to move forward despite it." We stood in the rain for a long moment. Then Harold started coughing. The deep, wrenching coughs that shook his whole body. I grabbed him, steadied him, held him up while the coughing tore through him. When it finally stopped, he was pale and exhausted, barely able to stand. "Inside," I said. "Now." This time, he didn't argue. I got him inside, dried him off, gave him his medications, and made him promise to rest. He fell asleep almost immediately, his breathing shallow but steady. I sat next to his bed watching him sleep, counting breaths like they were possessions. My phone buzzed. My agent. "Reeves, final thoughts before Monday." I typed slowly, thinking about Harold's words, about courage and truth and mattering in new ways. "Me. I'm taking the coaching position, not because I'm giving up, because I'm choosing something different, something that might matter more than proving I can still play." Reeves. "You sure about this?" Me. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Reeves. "That's my guy. I'll let Rivers know you're ready to discuss terms." I set the phone down and looked at Harold, sleeping peacefully despite the war his body was fighting. He'd taught me something in this weekend. Something I should have learned years ago. That courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and choosing to move forward anyway. About looking at the impossible thing and deciding to try. About accepting that you might fail, but trying anyway because the alternative is living in fear forever. Tomorrow I'd sit across from Vanessa and tell her the truth. That I'd spent 3 years running from the best thing that ever happened to me. That I'd been wrong. That I was scared. That I didn't know if we could make it work. But I wanted to try. And Monday, I'd walk into River's office and accept that my playing career was ending, that I was transitioning into something new, that I didn't have all the answers, but I was willing to learn. 2 conversations, 2 chances to be brave. Sunday arrived too fast. I spent the morning taking care of Harold, making sure he ate, making sure he took his medications, making sure he knew I'd be back later that night. "You nervous?" he asked while I was getting ready to leave. "Terrified." "Good. Means you care. What if it goes wrong?" "Then it goes wrong. But at least you tried. At least you can say you showed up and gave it everything." He smiled. "Now get out of here." "And Marcus?" "Yeah? Tell her I said hi. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'm proud of her. Even if she doesn't hear it from me as much as she should. I will." I drove to Vanessa's apartment through streets I didn't recognize, to a building I'd never been to confront a past I'd spent 3 years avoiding. Her apartment was on the 10th floor. Modern. Minimalist. The kind of place that looked good in photos but felt cold in person. I knocked at exactly 8 o'clock. She answered immediately like she'd been waiting by the door. She looked different, older, tired, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or styling. Just real. Just her. "Hi," she said. "Hi." We stood there for a moment, looking at each other, both terrified, both trying to remember how to do this. "Come in," she said finally. Her apartment was exactly what I expected. Clean, organized, full of the aesthetic touches that made for good content. But there were also traces of the real Vanessa. Books stacked haphazardly on the coffee table, a blanket bunched up on the couch, dishes in the sink visible from the living room. "I didn't clean," she said, following my gaze. "You said no performance, so I left it real. It's perfect." We sat on opposite ends of the couch. The same distance we'd been keeping for 3 years, even though we were finally in the same room. "So," she said. "So, this is harder than I thought it would be." "Yeah," she laughed, nervous and uncertain. "We used to be able to talk for hours. About anything. Everything. When did that get so hard? When we started being scared of what we might say. And are you still scared?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman I'd loved and left and missed every day for 3 years. "Terrified," I said. "But I'm here anyway." "Why?" "Because Harold's dying. And watching him face that with courage and grace and honesty made me realize I've been dying too. Just slower, just quieter. Dying inside because I was too scared to live. Too scared to risk getting hurt again. Too scared to admit that walking away from you was the biggest mistake I ever made." Her eyes filled with tears. "Marcus, let me finish. Please. Because if I don't say this now, I never will." I took a breath. I was wrong. About everything. About blaming you for the social media stuff. About making you choose between your career and me. About walking away instead of fighting. I was wrong, and I'm sorry, and I've spent 3 years trying to convince myself I was better off without you, when the truth is, I've been miserable, empty, going through the motions of a life without actually living it. "I was wrong too," she said quietly, "about putting my career first. About making our relationship into content. About not fighting harder when you started pulling away. I let you go because it was easier than admitting I was scared too. Scared that you'd always resent my success. Scared that I'd have to choose between being myself and being with you. Scared that love wasn't enough." "Is it?" I asked. "Enough? I don't know. But I know that every good thing in my life for the past 3 years has felt incomplete because you weren't there to share it with. I know that I've built everything I thought I wanted and none of it matters because I'm alone. I know that I miss you so much it physically hurts sometimes. I miss you too. Every day. Every game. Every stupid little thing that reminds me of you. Which is basically everything." We sat there, tears streaming down both our faces, 3 years of pain and longing and regret filling the space between us. "So, what do we do?" she asked. "How do we do this without destroying each other again? We be honest, brutally honest, about what we need, about what we're scared of, about what we can and can't compromise on. And we fight, not with each other, for us. I need you to accept that my career matters to me. that the social media stuff isn't just vanity. It's how I built something that's mine. It's how I found my voice. I can do that. And I need you to accept that I'm not always going to understand it. That sometimes I'm going to need privacy. That sometimes I'm going to need us to be just us, not us plus the camera. I can do that too. And I need you to know that my playing career is ending. I'm taking a coaching position. I don't know what that means for my future or who I'm going to be without basketball as my identity. And I'm scared and confused, and I don't have all the answers. I don't need you to have all the answers. I just need you to let me be there while you figure it out. Instead of shutting me out because you think you have to have everything together. I moved closer. Not touching yet, just closer. Can we try again? I asked. For real this time? Not the way we tried before when we were kids pretending to know what we were doing, but as adults who've been through enough to know how hard this is and how easy it would be to mess it up again. I want to, she said. God, I want to so badly, but I'm scared, Marcus. Scared that we'll fall into the same patterns. Scared that it won't work. Scared that trying and failing again will break me completely. Me too. But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what if? What if we'd tried harder? What if we'd been braver? What if we'd given ourselves one more chance to get it right? She reached across the space between us and took my hand. Her fingers intertwined with mine, familiar and foreign at the same time. One more chance, she said, to get it right, to be honest, to fight for each other instead of against each other, to build something real instead of something perfect. One more chance, I agreed. And then we were kissing, and it felt like coming home after 3 years of being lost, like finding something you thought was gone forever, like proof that some things are worth fighting for, worth being scared for, worth risking everything for. We pulled apart, foreheads touching, both crying, both laughing, both terrified and hopeful and alive. Harold says hi, I said. Says he loves you, says he's proud of you. Is he going to be okay? I don't know. He's old and sick and stubborn, but he's still fighting, still choosing courage over fear, still teaching me things I should have learned years ago. I want to see him before I go back to Miami on Tuesday. He'd like that. We both would. We talked for hours after that, about everything we'd been holding back, about our fears and hopes and dreams, about how we'd changed and how we'd stayed the same, about what we wanted the future to look like and how we were going to get there together. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of awkwardness, moments where old wounds surfaced, moments where we both wanted to retreat into safety, but we stayed. We kept talking. We chose honesty over comfort. And somewhere around midnight, I realized something. This wasn't the ending of our story, and it wasn't really the beginning either. It was the middle, the messy, complicated, uncertain middle where nothing is guaranteed and everything has to be earned, where love is a choice you make every day, not a feeling that just happens to you. And I was choosing it, choosing her, choosing us. Monday morning arrived with sunshine. I left Vanessa's apartment at 6, kissed her goodbye, and promised to call after my meeting with Rivers. Drove back to Harold's house where he was waiting with coffee and that knowing smile. How'd it go? He asked. We're trying again. Being smarter this time. Being braver. Good. I was getting tired of watching you both suffer. I helped him with breakfast, made sure he had everything he needed, and told him Vanessa was coming by tomorrow before her flight. She doesn't have to, he said. She wants to. We both do. He smiled. Family. Yeah, family. I arrived at the arena at 9:30, early. Because courage doesn't mean not being nervous. It just means showing up despite the nerves. Coach Rivers was waiting in his office. So was the general manager and the team president. All the people who'd made the decision to move on from me. Marcus, Rivers said, standing to shake my hand. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for being straight with me on the phone. I appreciate that. We sat. They laid out the offer. Coaching position. Reduced salary, but guaranteed for 3 years. Mentorship role. Opportunity to transition into full-time coaching after my playing contract was up. We think you'd be great at this, the GM said. You have the mind for it, the respect of the players, the work ethic. This could be the start of a long coaching career if you want it. And if I say no? I asked. If I want to keep playing? Rivers looked at me directly. Then we'd wish you well and help you find a situation where you could. But Marcus, you need to hear this. Your body is telling you it's time. Your performance is telling you it's time. And the league is moving toward younger, faster players. Fighting that isn't noble. It's just painful. I thought about Harold in the rain, shooting baskets despite the sickness, about choosing to matter in a new way instead of clinging to an old way that no longer served him. I'll take it, I said. The coaching position. But I want one condition. What's that? I want to finish the season as a player. Even if it's garbage time minutes, even if it's just practice. I want to transition slowly, not all at once. I need time to say goodbye to that part of my life properly. Rivers looked at the GM, who nodded. We can do that, Rivers said. You'll have a role on the bench, and when you're ready, really ready, we'll transition you to full-time coaching. I shook their hands, signed the paperwork, accepted that one chapter was ending and another was beginning, and it hurt. God, it hurt. Acknowledging that I wasn't the player I used to be, that age had caught up with me, that the dream I'd lived since I was a kid was morphing into something different, but it also felt right, like I was finally being honest with myself instead of performing for some imaginary audience. I left the arena and called Vanessa. How'd it go? She answered immediately. I took it, the coaching position, but I'm finishing the season as a player, saying goodbye slowly. I'm proud of you. That took courage. I learned from the best. An old man who shoots baskets in the rain and a woman who's brave enough to try again despite every reason not to. We're going to be okay, she said. All of us. You, me, Harold. We're going to figure this out. Yeah, we are. I drove back to Harold's house, found him in the living room, photo albums spread out on the coffee table. 3 years of memories he'd been preserving while I'd been running away. It's done, I said. I took the coaching job. How do you feel? Scared, sad, relieved. Like I'm losing something and gaining something at the same time. That's called growth. Doesn't feel good in the moment. But later you'll look back and realize this was when your real life started. He patted the couch. Sit. There's something I want to tell you. I sat. I'm not going to be around much longer, he said simply. The doctors give me weeks, maybe a month. The pneumonia's just the beginning. Everything's shutting down. Harold, let me finish. I'm telling you this because I need you to hear it while I'm still here to say it. You matter, Marcus, not because of basketball, not because of Vanessa, because of who you are as a person. You showed up this weekend when you didn't have to. You took care of me. You were present. You were kind. That's who you are. Don't forget that when things get hard. Tears were streaming down my face. I don't want you to go. I know. But death isn't the tragedy. Living scared is the tragedy. Living small. Living like you don't matter. Don't do that, Marcus. Live big. Love hard. Be brave. That's how you honor the people who love you. We sat together, crying, holding on to each other, knowing this was one of our last conversations, but grateful we were having it at all. Tuesday morning, Vanessa came over. She and Harold talked for 2 hours while I gave them space. I don't know what they said to each other. Some conversations are too sacred to share. But when she came downstairs, her eyes were red and her smile was real. Thank you, she said to me, for bringing me back to him. For giving us this time. Thank you for trusting me with him. We left together, drove to the airport, promised to call later, promised to try harder, promised to be braver, and I went back to Harold's house where I'd spend the next 3 weeks taking care of him, listening to his stories, learning his last lessons about courage and love and choosing to live despite the fear. He died on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after Thanksgiving. Vanessa flew in. We were both there. He went peacefully, his hand in mine. His last words, don't waste it. I knew what he meant. The time, the love, the chances to be brave. I didn't plan to waste any of it. 3 months later, I'm standing in the team's practice facility, wearing coaching clothes instead of player gear, teaching Rodriguez the pick-and-roll defense I used to run, watching him improve, watching him grow, mattering in a new way. Vanessa's in the stands, watching practice. She comes when she can, balancing her career with our relationship, making it work because we're both committed to making it work. It's not perfect. We still fight, still struggle, still have moments where the old fears surface, but we stay. We choose each other. We remember Harold's lesson about courage being the decision to move forward despite the fear. After practice, Rodriguez comes up to me. Coach, he says, thanks for today. I'm finally getting it. You're doing great, kid. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you miss it? Playing? I look at the court, at the place where I spent 12 years of my life, where I built my identity, where I learned who I was. Every day, I say honestly, but I'm learning that missing something doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It just means it mattered, and that's okay. He nods, not quite understanding, but trusting that someday he will. I join Vanessa in the stands. She takes my hand. You were good out there, she says. Thanks. Harold would be proud. Yeah, he would. We sit there, watching the arena empty, the janitors starting their evening work, the lights slowly dimming, and I think about Harold's last words. Don't waste it. The time, the love, the chances to be brave. I'm not planning to waste any of it, not anymore. This is my life now. Not perfect, not what I planned, but real, honest, brave. And somehow, that's enough. More than enough. It's everything.